Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello to everyone from the Venture Outfitter. We're having people stream in both online and everything. Today, we're here to have a very serious conversation about the Venture Outfitter. We're going to talk through about the mindful entrepreneur's path through depression. And really special program. Wanted to go ahead and to hop right in and stuff like that. Sometimes right beforehand we joke around a little bit just because to bring a little bit of lightness to today, because it's going to be a really serious subject. But I'll go ahead and click on the slides. And part of what I want to do, welcome to the Venture Outfitter. What we're here to do is to support you as you build your companies. And today, though, is more about building yourself as an entrepreneur. And especially for those of us that carry depression or other mental issues and stuff like that. Sometimes having a community to really tap into is part of what we're here to do as a community. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Linda Blackman, who is a Venture Force 17 grad from way back when, and her team at DualWorks. Thank you to them for supporting. They actually sponsor a good portion of our studio here at 183 Mopac in the middle of Austin, Texas. So thank you. And if you're looking for a specific need, especially if you're outside of the country and you need a physical point of presence into Austin or into the United States, they really go out of their way to configure what they have set up. And so thank you to Linda and her team. They're a great team to work with. So some of you guys are in our the actual Venture Outfitter area of the community. If you haven't been involved in community.techranch.com, we launched a new service called Circle.so. We got rid of the Slack site. We got rid of the Mighty Network. Actually, I just closed it yesterday because we're moving over to Circle. And right now we've done our alpha release, and it's really been just family members in there. We're about to invite everyone else that was originally on these other two platforms. If you're interested in being involved, especially for people that are on the program right now, we haven't really done the big push to invite a lot of the other people into this. And the reason is that I kind of want to test it out a little bit before we do a lot of that, as well as part of the thing is there's a bunch of special offers to long-term, I'll call them family members. If most of y'all that are hearing us talk, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or in the Zoom audience, have been involved in a while. Well, so like we did a few months ago, Austin Community College has come back with us and said, hey, we've got a bunch of spring computer studies interns. And I think four of the startups around the Tech Ranch were able to take advantage of these programs. Now, most of these interns are looking for pay. Some of them are actually looking just for experience. Make sure you take care of them. But if you're interested in getting or applying for some of these interns, this time, instead of us emailing you this information, you're going to have to go inside of the area called the Venture Outfitter inside of the community site and look for the little square of where this information is. It will be deployed there by 1 o'clock Texas time today. Right now, we've been formalizing this process, and we're going to be doing a lot more things with ACC. This specifically is on the software development side, and I know that at least there were 4 companies that I know signed up last time. I heard from Richard from the Haley Piano Group, or his company does that sort of stuff. They were able to finish off one of their side projects that was a new product for the company. So it can be really powerful about these students are early in their careers, but they've been well vetted by ACC and by the gentleman who runs that program. What's been happening around the Tech Ranch, you might ask? Yesterday, we hosted the Czech ambassador to the United States here in the office. He was in Texas talking to Lockheed Martin about a bunch of F-35s because defense is in fashion right now, I guess, because of what's happening in the East. But got to actually interact with him and his team. The Czech Republic, as you might remember, we have a venture bridge that we built out. And some of David Nichols is in the studio audience right now with us from Prague. Megan Short will be going much harder about what's going to be happening there. both specifically supporting Czech entrepreneurs, building out the connections between the Czech Republic and Texas, as well as really deepening this preparation for the Ukrainian response. Obviously, at some point, the war is going to be over, and we're going to be doing a lot of activities. And I'm real excited about having Czech partners to take that work on. On the right, all of the executives you see on the photo on the right are executives from Kyrgyzstan. As you know, I was just in Uzbekistan about 3 weeks ago, and we've actually hosted this group of Kyrgyz entrepreneurs, mainly executives for large companies that are doing really well. They're actually looking for places to make investments, as well as technologies to license and take back to Kyrgyzstan. And we'll be following up about that. Again, a lot of those tend to have been announcements. It's just easier to post inside of the community site, and we'll start exercising that a lot more instead of sending out special emails. Some of this stuff will be on our newsletters, but if you're really interested in getting involved and taking advantage of some of those opportunities, there's a lot of interesting innovation opportunities that you might not have looked at before. We'll be talking about that. I got to spend about 3 hours with the delegation in a in-depth workshop that we ran. More about that coming soon. But in kind of getting to today's thought for the day, especially as we embark on a really serious subject, I always like to kind of hop back into stuff like poetry. One of the most important set of business books that I ever bought was a poetry book by Hafiz. And well, actually, there's a bunch of different ones. There's not just, there's probably about 5 different poets that I could actually quote. But today, just sit there now. Don't do a thing. Just rest. For your separation from God is the hardest work in this world. We're going to talk about a really serious subject, but underneath, like at least 5 layers on what's not said today, since a lot of what we'll be talking about is business, is I want to make sure I point back to this quote, because I think some of the struggles, some of the thing that it's been happening for me as I've been dealing with my depression, as we talk about the mindful path through depression for the entrepreneur, probably the hardest thing to learn the hardest way is this. But we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll hop into that more. Thank you, Hafiz. So today's conversations about the mindful entrepreneur's path through depression. And some of you know that last week, if you were with us last week, as I sat in this chair, all prepared. We had prepared all sorts of programs about gratitude and Thanksgiving, and had speakers and all that sort of stuff. And I came to the program and I wasn't ready to talk about gratitude. I was only talking about fierce gratitude. And what is fierce gratitude? Well, fierce gratitude is doing your freaking best to find gratitude in the hardest of moments. The little girl that's on the top of my friends, Leonard Pierce, who I've known for 34 years, a buddy of mine from college, this young woman of 27 years old took her own life on Wednesday of this last week. And so going into Thursday was a pain in the ass. It was a pain in the ass. And this whole set of things I can tell you, but if you look at my Instagram, you'll see that, I knew her before her father met her mother. So I got to kind of grow up thinking of her as one of my own kids. And it was really, really hard. And it has forced me into really dealing with my depression. And it's one of the things that, obviously she was depressed. But part of the hardest thing about it is just like, how do you get through something like this? Especially for my buddy Leonard and his wife, Erica. And we could talk about that, but the thing I wanted to go ahead and use this as an excuse in her honor, and in her memory, and may she rest in peace. Amelie Pierce is her name, if I hadn't said that yet. Amelie Pierce. And so, Amelie, this is dedicated to you. The US government National Institute of Mental Health says that 49% of entrepreneurs have mental health issues. The number is roughly the same in the United States, generally for citizenry, but entrepreneurs typically are a special breed in that many times the whole thing that creates the need for independence or whatever it might be is some type of underlying issue like this, some type of underlying issue that is making it more difficult to deal with whatever is going on. And so when I was looking up these numbers, I'm sure that actually this was from an older study. I'm sure actually because of COVID, the numbers have gone up. They're still underreported, but this was a prior to COVID kind of number. And I don't think anyone got out of COVID unscathed. But that being said, one of the things that a community of entrepreneurs can do is help work through the sucky parts of life. And I'm going to introduce you in a little bit to two of the people who reached out to me when they knew that I was in what one of my military friends, actually a Navy SEAL, calls it the suck. And but the thing about it is, not many people are talking about this, especially with the tough entrepreneurs, right? We're supposed to, you read about Elon Musk and you're like, oh, we're supposed to be tough. Look at the man. I don't know. I think he's kind of stumbling right now, and partially because of mental issues, but that's my 2 cents, because I think all of us have been stumbling. I don't think it's a unique thing. It's just, we're taught, at least in the United States, that we're not supposed to talk about that. Don't talk about that. Hey, just quiet. Don't talk about that. But let's talk about that. And then the thing I want to provoke is consider what depression might represent in a culture with a history of a warrior path. What I really want to point to, and I think this is going to be a conversation for a future time, but I'm sure parts of it are going to get weaved in. Two of the guys that I'm going to introduce you to, and some of the other people that I'm sure that we're going to hear from in the Zoom studio audience, we're built as warriors, right? And I think when depression shows up, it points to something is wrong. And I think in some ways, when the battle, in previous years, and there are people, there actually are warriors or war fighters that are represented in the studio audience right now. Thank you for our Marines that are joining us from North Texas. For those of us that haven't seen that, I think that there is something that happens that when we're faced with certain things in the culture that the US and other parts of the world have become, that forget about the warrior cultures of old. And so I want to hint at this, because I think that sometimes that people who have depression, like me, hide it because they actually are like, hey, I don't want to talk about that, blah, 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 because you're not allowed to. But I think one night I was counseling a younger man who was really, really, really struggling. And I won't give his name, but as an example, he was really, really, really struggling. And he was in the throes of his depression. And I think that one of the things that I'll say about warriors is I think that when you have really dealt with depression, and you've seen the end of your life, I've been at the end of my life twice, thankfully, knock on wood, I'm still here. The thing about it is that when you've dealt with that, then you can actually see, oh, wait, I've already stared death in the eye. That's what's made me more resilient to really fight the good fight. There's a reason that I can go to 27 countries in the last 6 years and I don't fear it at all, because I'm like, hey, this is all going to work out. And it really has. It's been a joy. It's been really meaningful. I do think that that's the positive side about what this points to, but that's just my provocation that I'm going to start with, because there's honor in what this might point to. There's honor about what it might point to. And as we reconstruct our culture, which entrepreneurs are the people in society who construct cultures. So what I'm wanting to do is call you all out and say, hey, entrepreneurs, we've got a job to do. this is our job to construct the culture that recognizes this historical idea. I'm not saying it's a fact, I'm just saying it's an idea. And let's use this as an excuse to start constructing culture. That's kind of the elements of stuff that I'd like to talk about. Now, the two guys that I've invited to talk today, one of the beautiful things, you might say, okay, why'd you invite these two guys? These two guys picked up on the struggle that I was in. Actually, lots of people picked up on the struggle I was in. I've never had a reel that's been exposed to 1,000 people on Facebook before. I'm like, wait, I thought I might get 30 views. I got 1,000 views. I didn't intend that. I didn't promote it. It just was something I guess people wanted to see something about. But two of the guys that immediately reached out to me because they knew that I was suffering was Vince Marotte and friends ScottGoyette. They're both from Austin, but Scott happens to be in Frankfurt, Germany right now, and I really appreciate that he actually hopped on to this conversation. And what we're going to do, I'm going to get rid of the slides, and Jello will bring them into focus so that the three of us are on, and we're just going to have a conversation. The best part about this is just having a conversation about depression, getting through it, and stuff like that. One of the things that I know about both these other men, and I chose men, I think that there's definitely a place that I have female friends that would be appropriate for here. But I thought that the hardest thing sometimes, in at least the American culture or the Texas culture that I grew up in, is dealing with this idea of I'm supposed to be a man, I'm supposed to be tough, blah, blah, blah. Both these guys who we're about to meet with are athletes. They're really tough. They'll tell you a little bit about their backgrounds. But hey, Vince. Hey, Scott.
I'm not tough.
Thank you for reaching out to me during one of the roughest times that I've had in recent history. And let's share some of our scar tissue to see if we can help a few other people out there get through the suck, and share kind of like how we've done it, what we're doing and stuff like that. Vince and Scott, Vince, will you actually tell us a little bit more about your background, just so we have some context, and then Scott, and then we'll hop right in.
Yeah. Long time entrepreneur, successfully exited, sold off through acquisition, 2 startups, both coming up on nearly 20 years ago. Have spent most of my career consulting because as you'll learn, if we get to a chance to explain how my mind works and how people need to understand how their minds work, or it's helped me in my journey, staying in consulting type roles is the best fit for me and my mental health. So that's what I do. I'm at Simple Drive. It's a company I started 20 something years ago and just back at it. Live here in Austin, got 2 kids, been married 23 years. I got my daughter's in college, my son's wrapping up high school. So that's what's up.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for reaching out to me as well. Scott, how about you?
So similar to you guys, been an entrepreneur by default, and I think it comes from being an athlete, because you're an athlete, you're a competitor. It's always about what's next, what's next, what's next. And that's what's next thing doesn't allow us always to be present. So for a long time, when's the next sale coming? When's the next this? When's the next that? And finally, I just said, I'm done with this chase. I'm going to find the present moment. And I created a program, an organization called Go Love Now. And Go Love Now is all about mindfulness, being centered, loving yourself so you can love others. Everything you're talking about is exactly what I do with my clients. And there's a lot of things we do. We've gone into schools to work. We do coaching, podcast, motivational speaking, all the stuff. But I use every vehicle to get the messages that I see to be true right now out into the world. And I don't care what the vehicle is. I'll jump on a call. I'll write a book. It doesn't matter. As long as people get the information to help themselves, I'm on board. And I also 22 years and 1 kid, and that's enough. She came out so amazing. I was scared the next one would be like me. Just quit.
Well, thank you for being here, Scott. Thank you for being here, Vince. Yeah, in the preview, I had previously already talked to both of them. We're going to have them both come back and go into the depth of their expertise, because both of them are experts in their own fields. And today, though, since when both of, well, I've had recent conversations with both these guys about just life and the good, the bad, and the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And what's interesting about that is, you know, I definitely have a bond with both of them. I talked to weeks and weeks ago about that when you have mentors, you need to have 4 different types of mentors. And one of the types of mentors is to have running buddies. What are running buddies? It's like the guys that you go have a beer with, like, and stuff like that, that it's important to get their perspective. Both these guys are, you know, my mentors, and that they're my running buddies, type of mentors, and interacting with them. And the beautiful thing about having that, if you don't have running buddies like that, is I mean, find them through the Tech Ranch community, if nothing else, but it's about cultivating that, because nothing was more meaningful as I'm dealing with the really harsh, horrible feelings, and trying to do my best to console Leonard and his wife Erica. You know, I've been X-rayed last Wednesday on, and they picked up on that. Part of what I'd like to ask is, now in my case, I immediately knew to start doing extreme self-care, and what extreme self-care looked like was I was about to drive all the way to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, to hop in the hot waters there of like the hot springs and stuff like that, because that's something that I do when I actually feel like this. I was like, okay, I don't want to drive 10 hours each way. That's crazy. So I ended up going to the Korean baths in Houston, which, you know, people don't necessarily. For me, what I needed was hot water followed by cold water, followed by, you know, back and forth to really kind of purge part of that feeling out. What just hopping right in, Vince, Scott, what do you guys like? Hey, tell us, Scott, why don't you just like give us a sense of what you do? Like what's the struggle been? What do you actually take on? Anything like that? We'll start with you, and then Vince, I'd like to hear the same.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give, you know, one of the many things that I share with my clients and people that I'm working with. So many of us, there's 2 things I want to share. One thing, I think that we're in a collective awakening where we're recalling the divine within us. So in that recollection, when I'm sitting and I'm really starting to figure out that I'm a co-creator of this existence and realize my infinite ability, it gets really scary. So for your friend's daughter, for plenty of the kids I know, I'm sure they were in a place that was extremely scary. And the illusion is, okay, if universe, God, creator, source is trying to connect with me and elevate me, maybe I'll run back to that. But the message I think people are missing, and I want to keep preaching, it's much the opposite. It's a reminder that we're a co-creator. The divine can be used here to build a better world, whether it's with entrepreneurship, coaching, whatever you do. Be the best chef, be the best father, be the best brother. But we need to remind people their divinity and explain to them that leaving or exiting is not the solution. And one of the things that I've noticed, and you brought this up real eloquently with the warrior mentality, I ask people when I'm doing my motivational speeches, one of the questions I've asked, there's 1,000 people in the audience, and I say, how many people here are fighters? Like clockwork, you've got 90% of the people throwing both arms up, jumping up and down. It's like a badge of honor. And I get that because I was in that space. And I say, is that a good thing? And then all of a sudden they say, well, of course it is. And I say, what if you surrendered to the reality that you have divinity in you and you stopped fighting? What could that have looked like? And they're like, well, you don't understand my situation. I'm like, you're getting really defensive right now. And they're all doing it. And they're like, and I explain to them, I say, listen, I was in that space. So right now, they're all doing it.
Where needs to be muted.
Yeah. But there's what ends up happening is my whole life, I've decided that I got to where I got because I fought. But when I rewind and I start to think of what that surrender could have looked like, the surrender to the reality that when I connect, you said it in that poem early on, if I connected more deeply to source, creator, God, universe, and trusted that I have a brilliance that I need to share with this world, I wouldn't have needed to fight. Now, did I achieve things? Very worldly things. You know, you got the grades, you got the scholarships, you got the jobs. But then I woke up empty as all hell one day. So I know that resonates with some people because we're in the same space. We're working, and we're waiting for what's next, because that dopamine hit allows us to be in that present moment for only a moment, and then we're chasing again. So what I would ask people to do, and I think this is really important, and I've done this with myself again and again and again. If you think you're a fighter, if you think you're something that you define yourself as, is that a defense mechanism? Or is that actually something that is really part of your identity? So in other words, are you fighting because you're so scared that some people say you're a loser, you're nothing, and you say, I'm just tough, but all these compartmentalized emotions are just ready to explode. And I know from talking to a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, that this is a very common thing right now. So the things I want people to walk away from this comment right now is God's source creator consciousness is alive and well within you. Connect to that more deeply. That's the biggest part of the work. And look at your defense mechanisms or your perceived strengths and try to decide which is which. Because I don't think that I'm really the fighter I always thought I was. I'm a much better person when I'm a collaborator and my competition's only internal. I've become a much better human being and a much more successful at peace human being. So I'll pass it off to Vince, but those are some summary points to what I'm seeing right now in the world, and I think is useful info.
Yeah, no,
Thank you for that.
I think that's great, Scott. I would just kind of platform off what Scott's saying. The model I use to help both organizations and individuals map out a plan and move forward is it really starts like what Scott is saying is if you don't operate within yourself, what you are, and you don't put yourself into situations, context, relationships that are more optimal for you to be who you really are, that's when you fall into anxiety. And then the anxiety leads to depression. And so it starts with, and some of it's very academic. It's really easy to understand who you are. For hundreds of years, psychologists tried to identify what that is. Nietzsche said everybody is just looking for sex. You know, the Bible just says everyone is evil, and we just need to abandon who we are and try to be something different. But I think they got it all wrong. And Jeremy Rifkin really spells it out really well in some of his writings. Most importantly, I would say, if I had the book I recommend more than anything, if I could give away something, it would be Jeremy Rifkin's book, The Empathic Civilization. And in Darwin, same thing, survival of the fittest. We tried to make these identities and just blanket it across everyone. But when it comes back, once our core needs are met, we've been nourished, you know, we've eaten, we have water, we're alive, clothing, shelter, all that stuff. Our primary drive is to belong. That's the one thing that doesn't go away. Our mirror neurons want to activate. We want to feel like we are part of a community. It is our strongest drive. All that other stuff comes second. We all engage differently. So to pivot back to where I was, finding out who you are and the community you need to be around is really step one. What is it? How do I operate? What are the mechanisms that make me function and get me into what's often called flow state? There's a macro flow state for your life. There's that acute flow state for the moment where you're focused on something that is just immersive. And I think one way we describe it when I take people through the process of what we call the triangle of change is to first understand your mind. And we do a fun test where we try to determine or help you understand if you're a visual thinker or you're a language thinker. And then the other one we do, and this one you can do right now, you can actually think this through right now. Everyone in a functional capacity, the way we operate, whether it's in our work or within our community and friends, is everybody tends to fall predominantly into one of three buckets. Either they're a designer, a builder, or a manager. And if you are trying to operate outside of the bucket you're naturally inclined to be in, anxiety comes in, and then depression, and then it's just a tailspin from there. So the designer, and that's probably a lot of people on the call right now because we're entrepreneurs. We like to start, we like to come up with ideas, we like to chase, hunt, set a roadmap, and then give it to the builders, and they'll build it. And then the managers keep things moving long term. Everybody's different. Like, I can't imagine trying to be a manager. Like, that just is awful to me. I often try to be a builder, and sometimes I have to. When you're bootstrapping, you're trying to build something, I have to be there, and it's tough. But sometimes I got to go in there. But I'm never going to try to be a manager, and that's just not something I can do. So if you're operating outside yourself, and there's a ton of ways we use to find out who you are and how you change. If you're operating outside of yourself, anxiety comes in, and then depression. And that's really my story, and I learned it the hard way.
Well, that's interesting. I want to make sure that that I remind everyone that's actually hears that sort of stuff about operating outside self. Part of the reason that the community is there is I realized that there was a joke about when I started even before Tech Ranch was called Tech Ranch, and I had that first group of entrepreneurs. We had this little internal joke about there was a therapy group for entrepreneurs because of being able to have someone else to connect in with, as well as each person had different skills, and we can actually plug in to different people. So, like, as an example, I reflect that same thing about Vince and I recently were having a conversation where I'm absolutely not a manager. And one of the reasons that I do all my management activities on Tuesdays is because I absolutely hate them. I hate accounting. I hate finance. I hate looking at all the numbers and trying to figure out, okay, where did this one issue happen, right? I mean, I like the problem solving, but I want to solve the big problems. Like, my buddy Andrew is right now putting together mobile emergency centers to deploy into disease sites. Yeah, I want to do that. I don't want to, and save people's lives versus like figure out why is my AR report looking like crap. Well, it's part of the thing that I actually am sitting here a while ago when both they were talking. I'm like, I just want to sit here and listen. I don't want to host because I learned from both of these guys. What about just picking up on one of those themes? I know both of you guys have a lot to say, so I kind of just want to get out of the way. A lot of times when I'm hosting someone else, I'll direct things, but I'd like to throw it out to you guys. I'm just going to throw the ball up and say, what else needs to be said about these type of situations? Vince, what about, like, I know that there's follow-ons about some of the struggles that you and I have talked about. How do people walk their way out of these situations?
Well, I'd say ask yourself, I mean, there's the day-to-day tactical life, whether it's my job or the company I'm running or my social context, or even where I live. All these things matter. We build this model of who we are. How much of that is what you actually want is putting you in a holistic flow state for life and allowing you to achieve acute flow states on the daily. And so two questions I think everyone should ask themselves, and these are heavy and they're one of them's kind of dark, but it's important. And the first one's easy is, did you play yesterday? Did you play? Did you have fun and just freaking play? Hopefully it was within community, but some of us, we need more or less community, but did you play? It's the thing that makes us most human. So if you're not playing regularly, and I mean basically daily, if you're not playing, every time you skip playing, you start to, because that is the core self, to play, to recreate, to create. So if you're not playing, you're not being yourself. Some people are lucky in Western economies that playing looks like work's the same thing, so they do really well. And we try to be that because we see Elon Musk, who for him, fucking up Twitter is play for him. It's a nightmare for us, but we'll try to do it because that's what success looks like. So that's the first question. Did I play yesterday? What am I going to play today? And the other one is there's two light ways to look at it. One is, when was the last time somebody called you and said, hey, what are you doing tonight? Let's just go hang. And you could say yes. That's key. The heavier version of that is, it's 3 a.m. You break down on the side of the road, or you had a crash. Your significant other is out of town. Who are you calling? Hopefully you know that. Hopefully you know who you're calling. Hopefully it's a few people. But that's key. Did you play? And who are the close people to you, and are you making time for them? If you have to schedule someone who's to, hey, let's hang out, let's get a beer. Well, let me look at my calendar. You've already lost. If you can't drop things, rearrange things for people you actually love, I think, and I don't care how you're driven. If you're missing that, you're burning down your candle, and you're gonna run out of gas. It's not healthy.
That's an interesting insight, because it really does make me think. I am, since COVID, I know that I've trying to do my best to not be the guy I was in 2019. Kind of like what Scott was saying earlier about, be a better version of myself every day. Don't compete with anyone else, and like just the recognition that so many times I'm like, I became a master calendar guy going into COVID. And then, it's one of the valuable things about having to sit in the house and go nowhere was it kind of forced me to start looking at rescheduling. Or not having having a schedule, but not all day long.
Yeah.
So did you play, and what are you doing tonight? Hey, can we go grab a beer? And yeah, that's interesting, because Vince and I are going to go have a beer on Friday. So thank you for that. Scott, what about you?
It's on the calendar, though. Don't lie. It's on the calendar. So
it's on the calendar, but the thing about it is, one of the things that happened is I realized that, Monday mornings I need to sleep in. Fridays needs to be kind of social work day. I'm going to start with, with a coffee with a group of friends at Mozart's. I'm going to have a little coaching call with one of our members, Inez. She's got some insight for me. She reached out to me recently, someone that part of the community would know. And then I'm going to get to hang out with Vince. And there's a work purpose behind each one of those, but it's going to be a kind of a play day. It's even though there's a work purpose behind the conversation. So
I do the same thing. Fridays for networking and 2-hour lunches. That's really what I try to preserve it for.
Yeah, I do miss since we have so many people from so many different cultures. One of the things that I learned in Mexico was taking a proper Mexican lunch, which is, it starts a little late in the day. It goes, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, sometimes a little bit longer. And then people actually typically get back to work. But yeah, that's another thing that's interesting about reminding me to play. Scott, what about you?
I'm going to read a poem real quick because it really just syncs up, and I'm going to paraphrase or have some stuff to say after. But this poem is called The Master and the Art of Living. And I preach exactly what Vince was saying, but let me see if I can pull it up. I'm going to kind of find it real quick.
That sounds great. That's the thing is in the context of what are you doing tonight? Signal me as soon as you got it, Scott. One of the things I'll mention is I just set up in the community because of my recognition, especially since we have entrepreneurs that are in almost every time zone in the world. I just set up in the community a chat area too. And as you guys file into the community area, I'm going to have the app set up. Obviously I'm in meetings a bunch of times about being able to reach out. If you ever just need to reach out, let's have that be one of the places that we use. And it's a group chat kind of thing. Scott, go ahead.
So I just want to preface, Vince's point about play is so crucial. And for the first 10 years of motivational speaking, I used to end every speech with this poem. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he's always doing both. And that's James Michener. And
thank you for that.
It's a very on point thing because, to Vince's point, how many of us are in sales? And so we're maybe a builder or we're a designer and we're doing that. And then the natural organic path is become a sales manager. And then we hate it. And suddenly we hate our life. And then we're a director. And it's because of being misplaced. This happens throughout society just because of the organic ladder of elevation. And that's why a lot of us default and become entrepreneurs, no question. So one of the things I do to defend against that happening, and it's much like what Vince is saying to make sure you know who you are, is I have people write their own mission statement. And mine is super simple. I have a process that breaks it down that your mission's going to be true no matter what happens in your life. It's still going to hold steadfast. And mine is very simple. I empower those who are struggling and or have lost hope to find their brilliance. And here's the important part, share it with the world. So you're doing the internal work, you're finding your brilliance. I'm a designer, I'm a builder, I'm a manager. Once I know that, then I can take that with me. And then the crucial part that makes life worth living, sharing it with the world. There's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and it's a hospice nurse, a palliative care nurse. I think she was in Australia. Talked to thousands of people before they passed and asked one simple question: what's your regret? 95% of people said the same thing. I didn't live enough for me. And when you listen to the depth of what they were trying to say, they're saying, I didn't live enough sharing my brilliance, connecting the world I wanted to live. So in other words, I was a manager because I needed to feed the kids, and that's what I was told I should do, and that's where the money was. And you never were organically what you're supposed to do. So what comes with that? Vince nailed it. Anxiety, depression, that's where we're at right now. So one of the things that I've really focused on with any of my clients is we get a very concrete mission that really sticks. And I'm a big believer of this. Once you lean in to trust the divine God, source, creator within you, and you clear that conduit for whatever you believe that is, so there's clarity, there's a connection. Once you have that mission, the hows will take care of themselves. Now, that doesn't mean you just sit there and wait, okay? That means you create trajectory, you have goals. Don't do the goals from here. I want to make $1 million. I want this, I want this. No, I want to create a product that is going to save lives or change the world. You were saying it, Kevin. I want to do something big. The byproduct of that is going to be making that money. It's going to happen. And then let the universe redirect you. I swore to God, I'm absolutely going to be a motivational speaker. That's all I'm going to do. Then someone's like, you got to write a book. Then someone's like, you got to teach college business. Then somebody's like, you got to get on podcasting. I just follow the universe. When the person shows up and says, this is the next thing, I'm like, thank you. And I just jump in because I have that connection to source. I can feel right here, is this what I'm supposed to do or not? And it's right 99% of the time because I've created that clarity. The other thing we've got to think about, go ahead.
Oh, what I want to do is, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow though. If you had something else to say, I can stop for a second and go ahead.
There's only one more thing.
Yeah, please.
Mission. If you have a very strong mission that you truly know it, think of that as your core. Anybody who works out and does exercise work, you know that when you've got the core strengthened, it's going to allow you to balance. On this arm, I have my vision. On this arm, I have my identity. When I start to take a close look at myself and take those defense mechanisms that I thought were strengths, I'm going to start dropping these like crazy. If my core is not tight, what happens? I go out of balance, I tip over, I have anxiety, I have depression. Same thing with vision. If I'm making these ideas from up here and the universe is saying no, I get fired from the job because I'm not a good manager. That's not what I'm supposed to be. This is where the balance comes from. Create a tight, very clear mission and be willing to start shaving pieces off of the identity and allowing that to match with the vision. That will be those trajectory points, the goals, the how. And when people start to do this, I watch people shift gears like that. And it's funny because you can listen to Vince and you can listen to the things I'm saying. We're going to the same space from slightly different, but the same angles. And they're both, I'm sure, amazing processes that are letting people understand who they are and how to connect. That's what we need. I mean, that's what we need right there. Who am I? How do I connect? And am I at peace with that? And am I sharing my brilliance with others?
Thank you. That's it's interesting because I mean, I can even see in some of the moments that about, here I am, I've been working with entrepreneurs for such a long time, and there's some interesting things, provocations in what you're saying about, I'm like, oh, wait, I should step back and do the following thing. Let me though I want to ask both of you about this. And that we do have some people that are posting questions on LinkedIn and also in the meeting chat. And I had to shut down Facebook a while ago because it was doing I'll open it back up, but for whatever reason, it was echoing into our sound. So I'll bring that back in a second if there's someone posting questions there. We will do that. If anyone out there wants to ask questions, make sure that you post into the chat or whatever stream you're listening in on. All that's great. And I can see that bigger plan, but sometimes life conspires to make things difficult. and all of a sudden you're on fire. Like Wednesday morning, I woke up, I had my morning coffee, and then I got a call from Steve. And Steve was like, dude, and like I went from like perfectly fine, what an amazing day, I'm gonna go meditate, all that sort of stuff, to being on fire. And then there's certain people out there that have had, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without using any curse words, but I think it's appropriate for right now. So I apologize to anyone that might be offended, but they had shit sandwich after shit sandwich after shit sandwich happen because of what happened. There's a couple that I know that just lost their house. It completely burnt down. And for a variety of different reasons, they didn't have a lot of backing for finding their way out of that. What do you do when you're just absolutely on fire and you've actually had, like, you've had 2 or 3 really harsh things happen in a very short period of time? Sometimes the bigger planning is hard to do. And like, obviously we should do some of the planning before the fire comes, but what do we do to walk out of the fire? Like,
the problem's already there. That's not that the problem isn't that you're on fire. The problem is that you allowed yourself to be on fire. And that's
say more about that. Yeah.
It's the word is margin in everything. You need margin in time, you need margin in money, you need margin in physical space. Any margin will buffer the fires. So it's you didn't have whatever the problem was. That wasn't the core problem. The core problem is you didn't have the margin to deal with the problem, and so you had to completely internalize it, and you snap. So if you didn't have the time margin, the time margin, didn't have the people margin, or you didn't have the right people around to help buffer that, or if it's a financial crisis, you didn't have the financial margin, and that's really the issue. Is you're spread thin and you're about to pop, and that's just the moment that it happened.
Got it. Within then pushing it, if someone is right in the middle of that popping moment, I mean, I get the idea of margin, right? Like you're saying, business, money, money times physical space. If someone right now is in the middle of that, is there a couple of things you'd say to find the path out at all?
Be stoic. I can change what I can. I can't change what I can. I'm not going to internalize what I can't change.
Yeah.
In whether it's acutely or at a macro level, there's things I can change right now, and I need to just let go of the things I can't, or defer to people that can alter those things and change these realities and give me the outcome I'm after.
Give yourself a break is what I hear in that. Like that's sometimes the hardest thing for me about saying, hey, Kevin, it's my internal conversation. Hey, Kevin, it's okay.
And how much of that problem is a real measurable problem that's going to impact, in this case, maybe a client's bottom line, or it's going to destroy a relationship, things that really matter, or how much is it just Kevin going, this is going to make this person, that person, this group of people, think less of me. It's going to ruin the image I've crafted for those people.
Yeah. Mr. Tough Guy here.
and you got to let that go.
Yeah. Scott, what about you? Like, I'm in the middle of the fire. Other thoughts about, like, or not just Kevin. It's the whole show is not supposed to be about just me. But what someone's listening to this right now, based on the numbers that we know to be true, is, they have been handed a shit sandwich. And how do they take that first step out before they get to go to the, how do they deal with the dysfunction before they get to do all the wonderful planning and stuff like that, for the future? Like, what is the first step out of the fire from your perspective?
A very simple thing to think about. What you focus on becomes your reality. So think of this. If you've already attached to, let's say, for example, a girlfriend, we're in high school. If I lose her, I'm going to be nothing. She's so amazing, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff we did when we were kids. I'm already creating this. And then when I lose her, I already predicted this. I've made this happen. And so many times when something happens, if we rewind, we were focusing on it, creating that reality. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of meditation, because you meditate so you don't attach to thoughts and you don't attach to, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. Even something as simple as I need to be a great dad. If I say I need to be a great dad, what happens? I'm saying it every single day. Oh, I couldn't pick my daughter up on time. I couldn't go to dinner with her. She said, why are you going to Frankfurt, Dad? I wanted to hang out this week. So now I'm just a piece of crap. I'm this horrible human being because I'm failing because I said I need. What if I just say something like, I am a loving parent? That's a reality. So now I don't have any attachment. So I'm setting myself up for when these moments happen, like Vince is saying, being super proactive. One thing I tell people all the time, and you'll read this in tons of books, learn to be the observer. Sit back and just look. You know, Vince was talking about flow state, right on point. One of the ways to get into the flow state is step outside yourself, realize you're a divine being in this vehicle, and just glance at yourself from another space and just watch what's happening. Is this the end of the world? If I have this behavior right now, is this going to get better? I mean, that's what you need to do. Do we like it? Do we need to feel it? Does it suck? Yes, 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 yes. It sucks. I don't want to deal with it. I hate it. But listen, go talk to anybody who's won a marathon or been a college athlete. How many days were you up at 6 a.m. running or lifting or whatever? That sucked. But you did it because you knew it was what was going to get you there. You've got to do that with everything in life. So, you know,
yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, part of what I'll echo what Scott and Vince are saying, because they both told me that same type of stuff. If you can just crack the feeling just a little bit with whether it's that divine thought or even if you have to distract your mind with something healthy, that's an important thing to do. So yeah. Let's go to some of these questions. Ken Bodeman actually said, hey, Vince, can you repeat the title of the book that you referenced? I think that the book you referenced was The Empathic Civilization by Rifkin.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Vince has me reading that. And we're going to have a couple of these programs where we dedicate to the empathic civilization. Like, there's been more crises happening in the world. And the only way to respond to that is to be more empathic, to get deeper in. It's kind of an interesting thing. And I'm sure there's going to be a quiz for me on my readings on Friday when I see Vince. But anything else you'd like to say to Ken's question before we go to the next couple of different questions?
Yeah, it's an intimidating book. It's 700 pages. Jeremy Rifkin is the chief strategist for the entire European Union's move to renewable energy. And so he's an economist by trade, but he's a sociologist. I was turned on to him by my philosophy professor, who handed me one of his books. It's now out of print, called Algeny, which he references in that book. But he really is a brilliant man who is basically taking social economics to a whole different level. And is just an absolute brilliant mind. You can catch summaries of him on various talks on YouTube if you're not into reading a huge book.
Yeah, that's for those of y'all that are dyslexic like me. That's kind of how I started tearing into it myself, so I could then actually start mapping out some stuff. Let me ask the next question that Ken brought up on the LinkedIn stream, and both of you will have an answer to this, but I might throw this one to Scott. Can you guys speak to any morning routine or list to work into your day for grounding yourself or spiritually centered?
I'll give you a really, really simple thing to do. This is super easy. Do 4-7-8 breathing. And 4-7-8 breathing is, we're in a state of just constantly, the amygdala is firing and our nervous system is just constantly firing. So 4-7-8 breathing is in through the nose. And this is from Dr. Andrew Weil, studied at Harvard. So what you do is you breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 7. And then we're going to let out with a swish for 8 seconds. It's going to be like. So do that for a couple minutes just to start your day, and then lean into a meditation. There's one on YouTube that's super easy to do. It's a meditation bell. It's 5 minutes and 25 seconds. If you go to YouTube and look up meditation bell, one of the best ways to meditate to start your day, especially that early in the morning. If you do this right when you wake up, you're still in a theta space. So you can start really reprogramming the subconscious mind. Get to that space where you just did some of the 4-7-8 and then go into the meditation bell. What you want to do is you want to just listen to that. It's like ding, and it resonates. Just follow that ding so you're not attaching to thoughts. And then you're entering the day with some semblance of clarity. Now, I could go into a ton more detail, but for a super quick, easy routine starter, that's amazing. A great start.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Well, let's see. Vince, given the time, what I'm going to do, and since I know that we'll have a few people that
There's
are
a question in the chat that looked interesting from Paulina.
what was let's see. I'm going to pose a question though. When you have when you have obligations for your family, you should be focusing on ensuring that they are supported and taken care of, not pursuing your passion just because you feel unhappy. So finding what is balance is what she's saying, suggesting. What's your reaction to it, Vince?
Well, I would say you're going to let somebody down every day, and you need to preemptively categorize who you're never going to let down. And I'm never going to let down, if so much as it's in my control. I'm not going to let down my wife. I'm not going to let down my children. That's a no-brainer. So on the family side, I have to let people down every day. You have to say no, or you can't get something that somebody needs, or you can't, someone calls you for that beer tonight, you can't do it. You're going to let people down. So you need to preemptively, honestly, I stack rank who I'm willing to let down. You just have to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of I did a practice recently with the support of another person that, where you kind of scrape out what's going on in your subconscious. And then it showed up in my world as the world's not going to be okay unless I take care of it. And I did a vision quest a while back that one of the things that I took to that process on, where you sit out in the middle of the woods for, a couple of days without anything, any support, any connection. And I realized that I needed to change it to the world's not going to be okay unless I take care of me. The stack ranking needs to make sure that it includes you. So with all due respect to the question that Paulina is saying is, we will be letting down other people. We need to start, at least in my case, I need to remember that if I don't put on my own air mask, like they say on the airplane, if I don't put my own air mask on, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So that's a good thing. Vladimir from Honduras is saying, ate a lot of shit sandwiches this year, lost my parents, lost relationships and my job. Any words for recovery?
This is a hard one because we lost my wife's dad. My father-in-law was super close to us last year. And that was just he was too young. And then I lost a friend like a month later, both to cancer. And it was just a lot. And this is a really weird thing to think about. But if you trust in the how of the universe, creator, God, source, when a space is removed or when somebody leaves this world or when a job is lost, there's a space in you. There's a space. What we usually do is with our traumas, we try to fill that space with something else. So I'll work more, I'll do this just to get busy. Meditate, pray, do whatever it is you need to do to connect to source and allow that space to be filled with what it's supposed to be filled with. And I really have started to trust something beautiful is coming in there. And that's all I can say. And I've watched it happen. I'm like, what are we going to do about my father-in-law? What's going to happen with my mother-in-law? What's going to happen with this? And without telling you the 5-hour story, a lot of beautiful stuff has happened. And I feel even more deeply connected to my father-in-law as a spirit right now. And it's weird. I almost want to cry saying it, but it feels good. And so goodness is out there. You'll recover from this. Allow that space to be filled by divine, by source, and some beautiful things will come.
Vladimir, one of the things that I've had to do, that I've done a lot over the last few days is I've never considered myself an artist, but I think that we're all artists. And I haven't had the guts. Actually, some of y'all that watch the VO weekly know that every once in a while I'll sneak out a piece of my poetry and then like, then I kind of don't do it. But in my most emotional moments, I write. And I write stuff that looks like Neruda poetry, Pablo Neruda from Chile meets Eminem. So, and some of it is violently angry. One of the recent poems since Amelie's death has been "Fuck You, Depression." It's absolutely violent. And I don't know if I'll get the guts to post it just yet. I'm going to try to, because I think that there's enough people who need to hear. One of the things for me that depression shows up is when I have encapsulate and push down my anger so much about something that happened, because I'm sad about it, but I don't actually allow myself to express the anger part of it. The depression goes to a kind of really evil, or not evil, evil's the wrong word, but depression goes to like a place that might be unrecoverable. And so I've allowed myself to do that. As an example, tell you what, I'll WhatsApp you the fuck you depression poem. I'll send it at least to you. More than likely I'll publish it at some point on Instagram. It's I don't think people can imagine me being that violently angry. And because, it's like, it's the secret hidden behind the smile, which I actually write about that. So, yeah. Ken posted a couple other things. Thank you, Scott. Helpful when I wake up. I generally feel like I've launched a rocket strapped to my ass. Yeah, I know. I understand, Ken. And it's good to see you as well. I haven't seen him in a long time. Vladimir just said, thank you. David said, hang in there, man. That's a lot, but you can get through it to Vladimir's statements. And yeah, keep it going, Vladimir. Allow yourself to be angry, allow yourself to be sad, allow yourself to feel all the different emotions. Bring part of the community of practice of what we're here for is to help each other get through this stuff. I was looking, I know there's a number of other things that if there was anything else that wanted to be said right before, we've gone over our time a little bit, but I think this is such an important subject that I don't want to close it up. Paulina just said, thank you to Scott and Vince. I'm just wondering if any final words that Vince, Scott, that y'all like to share before we put a bow around today's program. Thank you all very much for being here, but anything you'd like to say just in closing?
Get some sleep, everybody. I think that's chronically, if I had to say, there's two things there. One thing is super easy to do. 60% of the people on this call probably are chronically dehydrated. Drink water, as Kevin gets a drink. Sleep. And I hear all the time from entrepreneurs, I only need to sleep 4 hours a day. You sleep 4 hours a day because you trained yourself to do that. But that's going to lead to problems down the road. And so if you're struggling with anxiety and depression, you know this because mornings are the worst. If you're deep in depression and anxiety, you feel like you have the flu in the morning because your cortisol spiked, and it's spiked at a huge level, and you're a mess. Sleep. You can grab that book or listen to his podcast, Why We Sleep. But you don't have to read the whole book. You just need to read the chapters on here's tactically what you need to do to get better sleep. And it's going to take time. But honestly, when I talk to entrepreneurs, nobody sleeps enough. Please sleep. Like it's just, your brain needs it. So sorry to preach.
Yeah, no, it's a good reminder. He's talking to me because sometimes I'm just like looking for the dopamine hit in a Facebook post, and I put the phone down and go to sleep. Scott, what about you? Any final words that you'd like to share with our community?
Yeah, Vince just talked about the self-discipline and the self-love component of, taking care of you. I'll just elaborate on it in general. Love yourself more. Love yourself more. Just keep saying that. Keep saying, I love you. Go look in a mirror tonight and say, I love you, and feel how uncomfortable that feels, and make it comfortable. Especially, and I don't want to say especially men, but a lot of men, it's a weird thing to do. And when I'm coaching clients, it's a weird thing to do. But once your cup is full, we know this, once your cup is truly full, organically, those people around you are going to be taken care of like never before. So love yourself enough to be there for those around you. The benefit will be tenfold, and that's the connection you've always wanted. But you got to start with you.
Thank you for that. Well, cool. Well, so what we'll do and by the way, Janet just said, thank you. I really enjoyed this discussion on LinkedIn. I know we have had some follow-up on Facebook as well. Sorry to the people who are following us on Facebook today. I, for whatever reason, was getting feedback on the channel, and I didn't get to observe that as much, but I'll follow up on looking at that. As we say thanks to Vince and Scott. You know, first off, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Vince, for and to everyone else. There's actually, it wasn't just these two guys. It's just these two guys called at a time that was particularly strategic to the fire that I was in. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing today. I think it's important for us to create this context of how we actually make it possible to work through this crap. And everyone's facing it, right? Life happens. Part of the thing that we need to do is just continue to learn how to move forward. One of the things that I'll actually say is, you know, thank you to my running buddies. And if you don't know who your running buddies are, go find some. And if, you know, if nothing else, there have been times that I've had entrepreneurs in our community reach out to me personally, and, you know, that's okay, because there's some of the roughest moments. I have scar tissue to donate. Same thing about Vince and Scott. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to, on the follow-up of this discussion, there would be pointers back to Vince and Scott on the YouTube notes. There also would be a deeper discussion area available in the VO Weekly portion of the community site. So go there. We'll make sure that Scott and Vince are listed there. And for a short period of time, you'll be able to follow up with a comment or two if you have something, or if you want to find out a little bit more about some of the stuff. All the resources, the books that both of them mentioned, the book of poetry that Scott mentioned, I'll make sure that that's in there as well, or ask Jello to help pull that first part together. But take advantage of that community site. That's part of why we got rid of Slack, because you couldn't do this sort of stuff there. And you got rid of Mighty Networks because you really, you know, it just was too complicated and stuff like that. And I made another little list of stuff. Some of this you already heard from these guys, but I'm just going to throw out this list as well, because this is what I've done since Wednesday. Meditation, loud music. You know, yeah, I'm Generation X. Maybe there was a whole lot of Black Sabbath and a really dark, aggressive music that I listened to at a really high, you know, pretty aggressively during the task. Channel your anger fully. I think that this is part of the thing that we have to remember, that my friend Christine, when we were at the hospital and Amelie's death had just been announced, first thing she said, Christine had lost a child as well years ago. And her, Leonard and me were really close friends, but all the way back to college. And one of the things she said was, she reminded everyone, it's okay to be angry when these type of events happen. It's okay. It's a natural thing to even be angry at the person, in this case, who took her own life, right? It's okay to be angry about it and to channel it. For me, this has included no alcohol. As much as I enjoy having tequila with my friends, it has not been any alcohol. I don't have a problem. It's just not the right time. Manage your addictions. We all have addictions. The addiction could be something as simple as Facebook, and, you know, just set the phone down, like Vince just told us. Go get some sleep. Read these books. A couple of books that promote some provocative stuff. I talked a little bit about, for those of you that are really suffering, there's a lot of interesting research that's coming out about psychedelics. And don't go into that path alone, but you might read these two books because they talk about dealing with depression. And then the URL maps.org, if you are curious about the research that's going on, go to maps.org, because it's amazing what's happening there. Hot baths, that's one of the things I mentioned. The other thing is just take action. Like sometimes in the middle of my deepest depression, which I haven't been in my deepest depression over the last few days, but I definitely in the past I just would make a list of actions to take and just start taking them and force myself, almost like Scott was saying earlier about going to the gym. Sunshine. And then finally, and in the spirit of saying thank you to Vince and to Scott and to the handful of other people who have cared for me over the last little bit, know who can handle your crazy. You probably know a lot of people, and not everyone knows how to handle your crazy. So one of the things you can do in preparing for the future is just figure out, it kind of Vince said this in a different way, but in my way of saying it is know who can handle your crazy, because it creates a safe space when the crazy does happen. So with that, if you are not on our email list, not on our mentor list, or want to be on our country manager list, make sure you go here and sign up. Just techranch.com, connect. And if you haven't been on our, if you want to be in our community, especially if you've been a long-term tech rancher, for those of you all, you should step in right now. The payment gate is going to come in starting January 1st. We'll have some of that for the venture outfitters happening right before that. So I'm trying to get all the family members in here, because the family who create the community. There will be other things that as we start promoting stuff wider, that we're going to have some paid for features and stuff like that. But for people that are getting now, you will help build that community. And I just want you in just to be in. So, okay, well, with that, we'll just wrap up for the day. For those of you all that are in the Zoom audience, stick around for a little bit after we stop the recording. But for everyone else, thank you for honoring us today with this whole process. I know that the struggle is part of this process of being driven by vision and values. And I always say at the end of these sessions, it's an honor to be here with a group of entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values for making the world a better place. Let's go change the world for the better together. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Vince. And Amelie, rest in peace. Okay, see you guys.
Thanks, everybody.